Welcome back to Fireside Chats. If you haven't joined me before, I interview entrepreneurs and finance experts to crack the code on everything from your next side hustle to financial independence. In this week's episode, I chat with my friend Mark Wlosinski. First of all, Mark lives in Hawaii, so he automatically wins cool points in my book. All his life, Mark was a saver. He loved to hold on to cash, but when he learned about inflation, that the value of money goes down over time, Mark quickly learned that investing his money was the only way to grow and not lose his nest egg. As always, if you like what you see, please smash the subscribe button below. Helping my channel grow will help me keep bringing you great content. And if you wait until the end, I have a special surprise for you. Now to the show.
Mark, what's up? Awesome to
Hey,
see you, man. We're always going back and forth in the DMs, but it's great to be face to face with you. I know you're in Hawaii, which is pretty cool. How's the weather over there?
It's nice. Yeah, it's been going good. We've been slower reopening after COVID than most, but we're finally starting to reopen, and it's been good. People are coming back.
Awesome. Love it. You and I were talking before we have been recording this call. We were talking a little bit about money mindset, and I loved that you brought up the idea of saving from a really early age. You told me that you would get allowance money and you would keep it and your sisters would go out and spend it. And I think sounds like that influenced you and your mentality now. So I'd love to hear what possesses a little kid to keep their money and not blow it, because I was the little kid that spent all my money. So what made you different? I'm very curious.
Yeah, I mean, my dad said something to me really young that always kind of stuck with me. And he said, before you buy anything with your saved money, you got to ask yourself, do you want it or do you need it? He made it very important for me to understand, though, that it's not that if you don't need it, that you can't buy it. It's more so just having that conversation to yourself in your head before every purchase. Not just going out and spending the money because you have it, but asking yourself, do I want it or do I need it? And then if you don't need it, then you're like, okay, well, I can treat myself, but I got to do this in moderation.
That's a very mature concept. How old were you when you remember your dad telling you this?
Probably like 8 or 10. Yeah.
That's like a good age to introduce that concept. Did he kind of make a game out of it or anything? Or he just told this to you and it stuck?
Yeah, I don't know. There's random things throughout my childhood, all related around money, which is what inevitably led me to my passion for finance. But things just stuck. I would just hear something or read something in a book or whatever. And it just it forever affected the way that I treated money. Just saving and the ability to save. I took a lot of pride in that, having more money than my friends, not from oh yeah, I have more money than you, but more of just oh, I'm doing something that not everyone can. It wasn't even about the money. It was about realizing that that's going to be an important life skill and developing it early.
That's really mature. That's a good inspirational story for getting to where you are now. You're obviously on Instagram talking about finance and mindset. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, how did you kind of grow up with all of that? How did it bring you to what you're doing today?
To be honest, it's taking so much pride for all those years of saving money that went up until my teenage years. I saved up for a car and bought a car, and then I saved up for college and ended up doing something else instead of college. So it was always for me about saving. And then I learned about inflation, and that your money every year, your cash, I should say, is always losing value. That's the one thing that's never going to change. The only thing that changes is how fast it's losing its value. And I remember when I learned that, Ian, it kind of slapped me in the face a little bit. I was a little mad. I had a decent chunk of change in my account that I wasn't investing,
Right. Oh, so you were just literally saving cash. Okay.
Yeah, I thought I was taking emergency savings to the extreme. I was trying to save my way to wealth, which we both know is impossible, but I just didn't have the financial knowledge at the time to understand why. I thought, oh, saving money, I have more money this year than I did last year, but I was neglecting the fact that inflation was constantly eating away at the actual value. I was only looking at the number in the account.
So this is not a recent realization, because I feel like inflation is getting a ton of spotlight in the press and online and just in the general finance community. So when did you have this realization?
My dad, luckily for me, my dad had started me a Roth years before I had this realization
Okay.
where I would tell him I had extra money and he'd say, yeah, I'll put it in your Roth. And I didn't take the time to learn what that meant. I just trusted
Yep.
him. So I gave it to him. And then in maybe about 2 years after that had started is when I was like, okay, I'm giving you this money. What's it doing? And that's when those kind of started turning, and I took over my own account management. He just had it in index funds, which I kept all of them, but all the
Right.
money that I added after I was allocating where I saw fit. But yeah, I'd say over like probably about 6 or 7 years ago now. And a lot of it had to do with moving out here to Hawaii. In Delaware, I never worked full time year round. I was always seasonal, just busting my butt, saving up through the summer, and then you make that
Grinding
last
away.
year. But I moved out here and was making, I started bussing tables at a restaurant on the beach, and I was making $23 an hour or $25 an hour bussing tables, which I had never made money like that on a consistent basis.
That's pretty good. That's really
Yeah.
good. I remember waiting tables right before I went to law school. I waited tables for a year, and I think I was making $20 an hour. So 25 as a busboys. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm factoring in tips too, like the way that
Okay.
they put into the check, so it was taxed early.
Right.
So
Right.
I did appreciate that. But
Okay, so you find out about inflation, like that shifted your whole mindset.
well, I mean, yeah, I found out that, firsthand that cash is always losing its value. And I said, okay, so what do you do about it? And that obviously led me to investing. Then you have a couple of different routes of real estate versus stocks versus index funds or whatever. I was just gravitated to stocks. I just thought it made the most sense to me at the time. Being in Hawaii, I didn't necessarily think that I had enough money for real estate. Now, after talking to a lot of people on Instagram, I realized that probably wasn't the case, but you live and you learn.
Yeah, the house hack, right?
Exactly.
I did not know about that.
Yeah, it was just a really, like I said, it was kind of a little bit of being angry at myself for not realizing sooner.
Right.
But that's a common thing amongst all investors, is we wish we'd learned and started sooner. So, at least I'm still young, or relatively young. So
you had told me that had never really had a high income, but like one thing that is I think so real is there's a lot of advice to just get started and invest and do these things. But number one, I think a lot of people don't know what to do. And then two, people that don't have high incomes are always wondering, well, if I can't really afford to invest that much, is it really going to make a difference? So I'm just curious, from your perspective, you seem to have had this realization a long time ago that just putting cash away is not going to be enough, or wasn't the preferred path. And also you seem to have done a lot with a little. So I'm just curious to what your take is on that.
I'll state right off the bat, I've been blessed with this time in the market. I mean, it's been on an amazing bull run for the last couple of years. I mean, it's had its ups and downs and its scares, but all in all, it's just going up and up and up. So I will credit some success to that. But to answer your question, yeah, no, I think that as long as you can fit investing regularly and consistently into your budget somehow, it really doesn't matter how much it is. I mean, it does in terms of how fast your ability to build wealth, but it doesn't in the fact of whether or not you should start. I tell people all the time, I would rather you say, I can commit to $50 a month consistently for the next 40 years. I would rather see a close friend or family member of mine make that commitment of $50 a month for 40 years versus saying, okay, I think I can scrape together 10 grand right now and then maybe 5 grand in another 5 years. I would much rather see you do that consistent strategy, because coming from somebody who's utilized it and seen it work for them, compounding it really is an amazing thing. It's like magic. And you don't really understand the full magnitude of compounding until you see it working on your money.
How do you think that advice has an impact on somebody's mindset to invest? If you just said to them, hey, throw $50 a month in regularly, what does that do for their mindset?
I think that it should really just change the way that you look at money as well as investing. Like, a lot of people don't want to start investing now because they're like, oh, well, it's been on such a run. I mean, it's got to crash eventually. And it's like, Not really. I mean, that's not necessarily true. Like, I mean, it might, but that's why I say consistency and that $50 a month over a long term, because then you're buying the dips, you're buying the all-time highs, you're buying it all. Versus if you just, gather whatever you have available right now and throw it in. If the market crashes 20%, your emotions are going to be really invested into that investment, because you're going to be saying, why didn't I wait? Why didn't I put less in? Whatever you're going to be telling yourself.
It's just that long-term mindset. I think it also has a lot to do with just the behavior of getting in the habit of doing something. And I love that idea that you don't need hundreds of dollars a month. Now, granted, if you wanted it to grow faster, yeah, okay, maybe you need more money. That makes sense. But if you're just looking to start out in a consistent manner, then take a small amount, put it away, invest it. Okay, so do you have a strategy then in terms of like cash that you would keep versus amount to invest? Because you seem like an OG cash investor and converted to investing in the market. So what kind of advice do you give to people, or what do you suggest?
I mean, I just always say the same thing. Just don't overthink it, and kind of, once you have a strategy, stick to it. For me personally, I have a dollar cost average strategy where I have a set amount in my budget every month that I invest into index funds no matter what. And then during the downturns, like what we're seeing right now, I find the money in my budget to invest more. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm sitting on cash. It just means that I can move money around effectively or find it in my budget for that month or two to add more.
Right.
So my goal is to try and double my contributions anytime the S&P 500 is over 5% off the highs, just because you're dollar cost averaging down at better prices. So
yeah, you're getting it on sale. Do you keep an emergency fund too? So you have some cash laying around?
I do. I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because that is really important,
you guys just had a big storms over there.
Yeah, we did. And, you just never know what's going to happen in life anyway, whether it's medical or
Totally.
So with that in mind, once I started seeing my money work for me early, it was really hard to keep that emergency fund, because you want to put all your money to work once you see it just going up and up, but it is pivotal. I mean, I try to keep personally 4 to 6 months of bills only. Whatever my expenses is for a month, I keep 4 to 6 months expenses, but I do keep it in a high yield savings account. Still not matching inflation prices. So technically it is still losing some value, but I mean, you got to do it.
It's there. Yeah, I agree. You throw out a lot of really good tips, especially for people that might be sitting on a chunk of cash and they're like, hey, this is my savings. Well, you should be growing that savings, assuming you have a tolerance for risk, but otherwise, as we know with inflation, it's going to be losing value. But don't sleep on having some cash for those rainy days, because they happen.
You're hitting the nail on the head, where it's either, if you don't have high interest debt that needs to be paid off and you have cash that's piling up, or assets that piles up, cash is going to be constantly going down in value. Assets will be going up. It's just going to be a bumpy ride on the way up. But long-term mindset, assets over cash. Yeah.
Assets over cash. Okay. Getting that tattooed on my arm.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Cool, man. I really appreciate it. Good talking to you. I will link to all of your socials down below in the comments, but everybody go follow Mark here, and thanks for watching.
Right on. Yeah. It was a great talk, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you stuck around this long, please let me know in the comments what you thought about this interview. I would love to chat with you about it. And if you look at the show description, you can follow my link to downloadmybudget.com, where you can get the exact budget that I use every month for free. This budget has evolved over a decade of use, and it literally is the same one that I use to pay off over $170,000 in student debt. So go download my budget. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.